Look, I'm going to tell you a story that still keeps me up at night. And I swear on everything I love, every word of this actually happened. It's about my brother Jake, a freezing cold December night, and a woman who would tear our entire family apart before bringing us back together in the most twisted way imaginable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because trust me, you're going to need the whole picture to understand just how insane this got. So, my brother Jake, he's what you'd call a self-made millionaire cowboy. And yeah, I know how ridiculous that sounds, but that's exactly what he was. Grew up dirt poor in rural Texas, same as me. But while I went to college and got a normal accounting job, Jake took the 20 grand our grandpa left him and somehow turned it into a cattle empire worth $8 million by the time he was 35. I'm talking ranches across 3 states, investments in everything from oil to tech startups, the whole 9 yards. But here's the thing about Jake. He never let the money change him. Still wore the same beat-up Stetson, still drove his old Ford pickup even though he could have bought a Ferrari, still lived in that ranch house outside of Amarillo that he'd been fixing up for years. He was a good man, my brother. Salt of the earth, which is why what happened that night in December 2023 absolutely blindsided everyone who knew him. It was December 15th, and Texas was getting slammed with this freak winter storm, the kind we only see maybe once every 10 years. Temperature dropped to like 12 degrees, which for Texas is basically the apocalypse. Jake had been in Dallas for some business meetings, staying at the Omni downtown, and he was supposed to drive back to Amarillo the next morning. But Jake, being Jake, he decided to take a walk through downtown that evening, said he needed to clear his head after being stuck in conference rooms all day. He's walking past Union Station around 9 p.m., and that's when he sees her. She's huddled against the wall near the old train platform entrance, wearing nothing but a thin black dress and a threadbare jacket, shaking so violently Jake said he could see it from 20 feet away. At first, he thought she might be homeless, but as he got closer, he realized she was young, maybe mid-20s, and she had this beaten-up suitcase next to her like she'd just arrived from somewhere. Her lips were literally turning blue, and she was crying, these quiet sobs that she was trying to hide. Jake told me later that something in his gut just twisted when he saw her, like God himself was saying, "Don't you dare walk past this woman." So Jake approaches her real careful-like because he knows how scared a woman alone at night can be, and he says, "Ma'am, you okay? You look like you're about to freeze to death out here." And this woman, she looks up at him with these huge brown eyes, and Jake said it was like getting punched in the chest. She was beautiful, but not in that magazine way, more like beautiful in the way a sunrise is beautiful, you know? Natural, real, but terrified. She's looking at him like she can't decide if he's there to help or hurt her, and she says in this accent that Jake couldn't quite place, "Please, I am okay. I am just waiting." Waiting for what? Jake asks. The next train? 'Cause, honey, I hate to break it to you, but Amtrak's last train left 2 hours ago, and there's nothing else coming through here tonight. That's when she just breaks down completely, started sobbing so hard she couldn't even talk, and Jake's standing there in his expensive wool coat feeling like the biggest piece of garbage for making her cry. He crouches down next to her, keeping a respectful distance, and he says real gentle, Hey, it's all right. Whatever's going on, we can figure it out. But first things first, we gotta get you inside before you get hypothermia. There's a diner about 2 blocks from here that's open all night. How about I buy you some coffee and we'll go from there? I promise I'm not trying anything weird. I got 2 sisters, and if they were stuck out in this cold, I'd hope somebody would help them too. Something about mentioning his sisters must have gotten through to her, because she nods and lets Jake help her up. He said she was so cold she could barely walk straight, and her suitcase felt like it had rocks in it. They make it to this 24-hour diner called Lucky's, and Jake gets them a booth in the back, orders her hot chocolate, coffee, and chicken soup without even asking what she wants, just tells the waitress to bring anything hot. And while they're waiting, this woman finally starts talking. Her name was Alina, and she was from Moldova, which Jake had to admit he wasn't 100% sure where that was, but he knew it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. She'd come to America 6 months ago to work as a maid for this wealthy family in Highland Park, the super rich area of Dallas. Elena tells Jake that the family had sponsored her visa, promised her good wages, a place to stay, and the chance to save money to bring her younger sister to America. But it turned into a nightmare. They treated her like property, worked her 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, paid her almost nothing, took her passport, and threatened to have her deported if she complained. Classic trafficking situation, though Jake didn't realize it at first. Then, that day, December 15th, Elena had finally worked up the courage to run. She grabbed her passport when the wife of the family left it on the kitchen counter, packed her one suitcase, and walked out while they were at some charity gala. She had no phone, no friends in America, and exactly $47 to her name. She'd gone to the train station because she remembered the family had taken a train to Houston once, and she thought maybe she could buy a ticket somewhere, anywhere away from Dallas. But $47 wasn't enough for even the cheapest ticket, so she'd been sitting there for hours trying to figure out what to do. And then the cold had set in. Jake sat there listening to all this, and I know my brother. I could see his face even though I wasn't there. He gets this look when he's angry, this quiet, dangerous look, where his jaw gets real tight and his eyes go cold. He asked her, "You got the address where you were staying? The names of these people?" Elena shook her head frantically. "Please, no police. They will send me back to Moldova. My visa is tied to them. If I report them, I lose everything." Jake leaned back in that booth, and I imagine he was thinking real hard about what to do next. Finally, he said, "All right, here's what's going to happen. You're not going back to those people, and you're not sleeping on the street in this weather. I got a hotel room at the Omni with 2 beds. You take one, I'll take the other. Door stays unlocked, and in the morning, we'll figure out your next move. And before you say no, I'm not taking no for an answer, because I ain't about to let you freeze to death or end up in some worse situation." Elena looked at him like he was insane. "You do not know me. Why would you do this?" And Jake, in typical Jake fashion, just shrugged and said, "Because it's the right thing to do. And honestly, I got more money than sense most days, so I might as well use it for something good." That's my brother, y'all. Heart bigger than Texas. So they go back to the Omni, and Jake gives her his word that he's not going to try anything, and he keeps it. Elena takes a hot shower, puts on some of Jake's clean clothes that are way too big for her, and crashes in one bed while Jake barely sleeps in the other, checking every hour to make sure she's still breathing, because he was genuinely worried about her. The next morning, Jake wakes up to find Elena already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed looking at her passport like it's the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. They go down to breakfast, and Jake starts asking practical questions. Does she have any family in America? No. Does she have any savings? The $47. Does she have any job prospects? Just her experience as a maid, but no references she could actually use. Jake's sitting there doing the math in his head, and then he says something that I still think was absolutely crazy, but also so perfectly Jake. He says, "Elena, I got a proposition for you. I live on a ranch outside Amarillo, about 6 hours from here. Big house, lots of land, and I've been needing to hire someone to help keep the place clean because I'm on the road half the time for business. I can pay you $20 an hour, give you your own room with a private bathroom, and help you figure out your visa situation. All legal, above board. You'd basically be a live-in housekeeper, but with actual days off and the freedom to leave whenever you want. It ain't glamorous, but it's honest work and a roof over your head until you get on your feet." Elena just stared at him. "Why are you being so kind to me? What do you want?" Jake finished his coffee and looked her dead in the eye. "I don't want anything except to help. I've had some lucky breaks in my life, and I figure I'm supposed to pay that forward. Plus, and I'm going to be real honest with you, my house is a disaster, and I could genuinely use the help." Something in his tone must have convinced her because Elena said yes. Just like that, she agreed to move to a ranch in the middle of nowhere with a man she'd met 12 hours ago. Crazy, right? But here's the thing. I think she recognized something in Jake that I'd always known about him. He was genuine. No ulterior motives, no hidden agenda. Just a good man trying to do a good thing. So Jake drives Elena back to Amarillo that day, and I didn't even know about any of this yet because Jake hadn't called me. He gets her settled in the guest house on his property, a little 2-bedroom cottage that he'd originally built for ranch hands but never ended up using. He takes her to Walmart, buys her clothes, toiletries, everything she needs, and tells her to take a few days to rest before she starts working. And Elena, she's just overwhelmed by all of it, crying and thanking him in this mix of English and Romanian, and Jake's getting all embarrassed like he always does when people make a fuss over him. That first week, Elena mostly stayed in the cottage, and Jake gave her space. But by the second week, she started actually cleaning the main house, and Jake said it was like night and day. The place had been livable, but messy, typical bachelor pad stuff. But Elena transformed it. Suddenly, everything was organized, the kitchen sparkled, the laundry was always done, and she even started cooking these amazing Moldovan dishes that Jake had never heard of but became obsessed with. They fell into this easy rhythm. Elena would work during the day while Jake handled ranch business, and then in the evenings, they'd sometimes sit on the porch and talk, not about anything heavy, just small talk. But Jake said those conversations became the best part of his day. Now here's where I come into the story. It was January, about 3 weeks after Jake found Elena, and I finally drove down from Oklahoma City to visit my brother like I did every few months. I show up at the ranch expecting the usual mess and Jake eating takeout, but instead I walk into a spotless house that smells like fresh bread and pine cleaner. Jake's in the kitchen, and before I can even ask what the hell happened, Elena walks in from the laundry room carrying a basket of folded towels. Jake introduces us real casual, like, "Hey sis, this is Elena. She's been helping me out around the house." And I'm standing there trying to process this beautiful young woman living on my bachelor brother's ranch. After Elena excused herself, I cornered Jake in the living room and whispered, "Okay, what's going on? Who is she really?" Jake told me the whole story, every detail, from the train station to the hotel to the job offer, and I'm listening with my mouth hanging open. When he finished, I said, "Jake, are you out of your mind? You brought a complete stranger to live on your property. She could be running some kind of scam. She could rob you blind. You don't know anything about her." Jake got that stubborn look on his face and said, "I know she needed help and I could provide it. That's enough." We argued about it for like an hour, but Jake wouldn't budge. He trusted Elena, and that was that. I gotta admit, I was suspicious of Elena at first. I thought maybe she was playing my brother, working some long con to get at his money. But the more time I spent at the ranch over the next few months, the more I realized Elena was exactly who she appeared to be. She worked hard, never asked Jake for anything beyond her wages, and slowly started to come out of her shell. By March, she was smiling more, laughing at Jake's terrible jokes, and teaching him random Romanian phrases. I watched them together, and I started to notice things. The way Jake's face would light up when Elena walked into a room, the way Elena's eyes would follow Jake when she thought no one was looking, the way they'd accidentally brush hands reaching for the same thing and both pull back like they'd been shocked. In April, Jake called me sounding stressed. "I think I got a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" I asked. There was a long pause, and then Jake said real quiet, "I think I'm falling for her, like really falling for her." I wasn't surprised, honestly. I'd seen this coming from a mile away, but I was worried. Jake, you're her employer. She's dependent on you for housing and money and her visa situation. That's a massive power imbalance. You can't act on this. Jake sighed. "I know, trust me, I know. That's why it's a problem. I can't even tell if she feels the same way or if she's just being nice because I'm her boss. It's driving me crazy." For the next 2 months, Jake tortured himself trying to keep things professional with Elena, while clearly being head over heels in love with her. It would have been funny if it wasn't so painful to watch. Then in June, something shifted. Elena's younger sister Maria got approved for a visa to come study in America, and Elena was ecstatic. The day Maria arrived at the ranch, Elena hugged Jake so tight he said he couldn't breathe, and she told him, "Thank you for giving me a life where I can help my family. You are the best man I have ever known." Jake almost lost it right there, but he held it together. Maria was 19, sweet kid, super smart, planning to study engineering at Texas Tech. She moved into the cottage with Elena, and suddenly the ranch felt more alive than ever. We had family dinners where Elena and Maria would cook Moldovan food and teach us drinking songs in Romanian, and Jake would tell embarrassing stories about growing up poor, and I'd share memories of our mama who'd passed away 10 years back. It felt right, like Elena and Maria had always been part of our family. Then one night in July, everything came to a head. There was a huge summer storm, the kind with lightning that cracks so loud it shakes your bones, and the power went out across the whole ranch. Maria was staying overnight in Lubbock with some friends, so it was just Jake and Elena in the main house, lighting candles and laughing about how the one night they couldn't watch TV was the one night there was actually something good on. They were sitting in the living room, and Jake told me later that the candlelight made Elena look like something out of a dream. They were talking about nothing important, just rambling, and then Elena said, "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Anything," Jake said. "Why did you help me that night in Dallas? The truth." Jake was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "You want to know the honest truth? I don't know. I saw you there, and something in my gut told me I couldn't walk away. And every day since then, I've been thanking God I listened to that gut feeling, because knowing you has been the best thing that's happened to me in years." Elena looked down at her hands. "Jake, I need to tell you something, but I am afraid." "You don't gotta be afraid of anything with me, Elena. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it." She took a deep breath. "I think I am falling in love with you. No, I know I am. And I know this is terrible because you are my employer and you have done so much for me, and maybe I'm just confused, but I cannot stop how I feel." Jake said his heart was pounding so hard he thought he might pass out. He reached over and took her hand, real gentle. "Elena, I've been in love with you since about the 3rd week you were here. I just didn't know how to tell you without making things weird or making you feel pressured." "You love me?" Elena whispered. "Yeah, I really do." And right there in the candlelight, during a Texas thunderstorm, they kissed for the first time. Jake said it was like coming home after being lost for years. They stayed up all night talking about everything, their fears, their hopes, what a relationship between them would even look like given the complicated situation. They decided to take things slow, to keep it quiet until they could figure out the employment and visa stuff properly. Jake wanted to do everything by the book, make sure Elena never felt trapped or obligated. For the next 3 months, they dated in secret. Well, secret from most people. I figured it out in about 2 days when I visited in August and saw the way they looked at each other. I pulled Jake aside and said, "Y'all are together now, aren't you?" Jake tried to deny it for like 5 seconds before giving up. Yeah, we are." I asked him if he was being careful, if he was protecting her, if he understood the responsibility he was taking on, and Jake swore he was doing everything right. He'd already talked to an immigration lawyer about getting Elena's visa transferred and making sure she wasn't dependent on him legally. He was treating her like gold, giving her space, making sure she knew she could leave any time. I had to admit, Jake was handling it as well as anyone could. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. In September, something happened that none of us saw coming. Elena started getting threatening messages. It started with a weird call to the ranch phone, someone asking for Elena in accented English, and when Jake said she wasn't available, the caller said, "Tell her we know where she is. Tell her she cannot hide." Elena went white when Jake told her. Then, a few days later, someone left a note on the windshield of her car that said, "You owe us. You will pay." Elena broke down and told Jake everything she'd been too scared to mention before. The family she'd worked for in Dallas, the Vandenbergs, they weren't just abusive employers. They were part of something bigger, a network that brought women over from Eastern Europe under false pretenses and essentially enslaved them. Elena had been one of dozens. When she'd run, she'd broken a chain, and the people running the operation weren't happy about it. They'd spent months looking for her, and somehow they'd finally tracked her to Amarillo. Elena was terrified. "They will kill me, Jake, or they will have me deported, and then they will kill me. These are not normal people. They have money, connections, power." Jake was furious, that cold, dangerous fury I mentioned before. "They ain't touching you. I don't care who they are or what connections they got. You're under my protection now, and I'll die before I let anyone hurt you." He called the best lawyer he knew, a guy who specialized in immigration and human trafficking cases. They started building a case, gathering evidence, preparing to go to the authorities. But the threats kept escalating. Someone broke into the cottage while Elena and Maria were in town, trashed the place, left another note. "This is your last warning." That's when Jake made a decision that still blows my mind. He decided they needed to disappear for a while, lay low until the legal case was solid enough that the Vandenbergs couldn't touch Elena. In October, he told me he was taking Elena and Maria out of state, somewhere safe, and I wasn't going to know where. "The less you know, the safer everyone is," he said. I was scared out of my mind, but I trusted Jake. They left in the middle of the night, didn't even tell the ranch hands where they were going. For 2 months, I heard from Jake exactly 3 times, just quick calls to let me know they were okay. He sounded stressed, but determined. Then in December, right around the anniversary of when he'd first found Elena at the train station, I got a call at like 2 in the morning. It was Jake, and he sounded different. Happy, really happy. "Hey sis, you sitting down?" I was now, because late night calls are never good. "What happened? Are y'all okay?" Jake laughed. "We're better than okay. I just wanted to call and tell you that Elena and I got married." I swear, my heart stopped. "You what?" "We got married, like legally married. Courthouse wedding in Montana 3 days ago." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. "Jake, are you insane? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you invite me? Why Montana? What the hell is going on?" Jake explained that the lawyer had advised them that marriage would immediately change Elena's visa situation, give her more protection, make it harder for anyone to deport her or claim ownership over her. It would also make Jake's legal standing stronger if he had to protect her. So they'd done it. Quick and simple. Just the 2 of them and Maria as a witness at a courthouse in Missoula. "I know it sounds crazy," Jake said, "but I was going to marry her anyway, and this way she's safer. I love her, and she loves me, and we made it official." "Jake, please tell me you didn't just marry her to fix her visa problems. Please tell me this is real." "It's the realest thing I've ever done in my life. I know the timing's complicated, but my feelings aren't. I want to spend the rest of my life with this woman." I was processing all of this, hurt that my brother had gotten married without me there, scared about the danger they were still in, but also weirdly happy for him because I could hear in his voice that he meant every word. "When are you coming home?" I asked. Jake sighed. "Soon. The lawyer thinks we're close to having everything we need to go to the FBI. Once we blow this thing open, Elena should be safe. Maybe another week or 2. But it wasn't another week or 2. It was 3 days. 3 days later, I got another call, but this time it wasn't Jake. It was a detective from the Amarillo PD. They'd found Jake's truck abandoned on a back road about 40 miles from his ranch, bullet holes in the driver's side door, blood on the seats. Jake, Elena, and Maria were gone, just vanished. No bodies, no signs of struggle beyond the truck, nothing. The detective told me they were investigating it as a possible kidnapping, but honestly, he sounded like he thought they might be dead already. I lost it, completely lost it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but scream and sob. My brother was gone. The detective tried to keep me on the line, asking questions about Jake's activities, about Elena, about any enemies he might have, but I could barely form words. They launched a full investigation, and I learned more than I ever wanted to know about the Vandenberg family and their trafficking network. Turns out, Jake and Elena had been building an airtight case against them, had evidence that would have put multiple people in prison for decades. The Vandenbergs had figured it out, and they acted first. Days turned into weeks. Christmas came and went, and it was the worst holiday of my life. I spent it alone in Jake's ranch house, surrounded by Elena's decorations that she had put up before they'd fled, wondering if I'd ever see my brother again. The FBI had taken over the case, but they weren't telling me much. I hired private investigators, offered a reward, did everything I could think of. Nothing. It was like they'd been erased from existence. Then, on January 7th, 2025, exactly 13 months after Jake first found Elena at the train station, I got a knock at my door at 6 in the morning. I opened it, expecting cops with bad news, and instead, Jake was standing there, alive, skinny as hell, bruised with a scar on his cheek that hadn't been there before, but alive. I grabbed him and didn't let go for probably 5 minutes, just sobbing into his shoulder while he held me and whispered, "It's okay. I'm okay. We're okay." Once I could finally breathe again, I pulled back and hit him in the chest. "Where the hell have you been? What happened? Where's Elena? Where's Maria? Jake, they found your truck with bullet holes. We thought you were dead." Jake came inside and sat down heavy on the couch, looking exhausted. "It's a long story. You got coffee?" I made coffee with shaking hands while Jake gathered his thoughts. Then he told me everything. The night they'd disappeared, they'd been driving back to the ranch because the lawyer said they finally had enough evidence to move forward. But they'd been followed from Montana. The Vandenbergs had hired professionals, not cops, actual hired muscle, to take them out. There'd been a chase on that back road, shots fired, and Jake had to crash his truck deliberately into a ditch to avoid getting hit. They ran into the woods, and that's where things got really crazy. Jake said they spent the next 3 days literally running for their lives through the Texas wilderness. He had his gun, enough training from growing up hunting to keep them moving in the right direction, and pure desperation. The men chasing them were good, but Jake was fighting for his family now, and that made him better. They made it to a tiny town called Eden, found a sympathetic sheriff who Jake convinced to help them, and that sheriff got them into proper protective custody with the FBI. For the last 6 weeks, Jake, Elena, and Maria had been in witness protection, working with federal prosecutors to dismantle the entire Vandenberg trafficking network. And it worked, Jake said, his eyes lighting up for the first time. They arrested 15 people yesterday. The Vandenbergs, their associates, everyone. They're looking at life sentences, multiple counts of human trafficking, conspiracy, attempted murder. It's over. Elena's safe. Maria's safe. We can finally come home. I was crying again, but happy tears this time. "When are you coming home?" I asked. Jake sighed. "Soon. The lawyer thinks we're close to having everything we need to go to the FBI. Once we blow this thing open, Elena should be safe. Maybe another week or two." But it wasn't another week or two. It was 3 days. 3 days later, I got another call, but this time it wasn't Jake. It was a detective from the Amarillo PD. They'd found Jake's truck abandoned on a back road about 40 miles from his ranch, bullet holes in the driver's side door, blood on the seats. Jake, Elena, and Maria were gone, just vanished. No bodies, no signs of struggle beyond the truck, nothing. The detective told me they were investigating it as a possible kidnapping, but honestly, he sounded like he thought they might be dead already. I lost it, completely lost it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but scream and sob. My brother was gone. The detective tried to keep me on the line, asking questions about Jake's activities, about Elena, about any enemies he might have, but I could barely form words. They launched a full investigation, and I learned more than I ever wanted to know about the Vandenberg family and their trafficking network. Turns out, Jake and Elena had been building an airtight case against them, had evidence that would have put multiple people in prison for decades. The Vandenbergs had figured it out, and they acted first. Days turned into weeks. Christmas came and went, and it was the worst holiday of my life. I spent it alone in Jake's ranch house, surrounded by Elena's decorations that she had put up before they'd fled, wondering if I'd ever see my brother again. The FBI had taken over the case, but they weren't telling me much. I hired private investigators, offered a reward, did everything I could think of. Nothing. It was like they'd been erased from existence. Then, on January 7th, 2025, exactly 13 months after Jake first found Elena at the train station, I got a knock at my door at 6 in the morning. I opened it, expecting cops with bad news, and instead, Jake was standing there, alive, skinny as hell, bruised with a scar on his cheek that hadn't been there before, but alive. I grabbed him and didn't let go for probably 5 minutes, just sobbing into his shoulder while he held me and whispered, "It's okay. I'm okay. We're okay." Once I could finally breathe again, I pulled back and hit him in the chest. "Where the hell have you been? What happened?" But here's the thing, and this is the part that still gives me chills. 3 days after they came home, we were all having dinner at the ranch, trying to settle back into normal life, when Elena suddenly got quiet. She was staring at her phone, her face going pale. "What's wrong?" Jake asked immediately, his whole body tensing. Elena turned the phone around to show us. It was a news article about the Vandenberg case. One of the men arrested, a guy named Victor, who'd been one of the main enforcers, had posted bail somehow. And according to the article, he'd disappeared, skipped bail, gone underground. The FBI was looking for him. Jake grabbed the phone, reading fast, and I watched the color drain from his face, too. "That's one of the guys who chased us," he said quietly. "He was leading the team that tried to kill us in the woods." The room went dead silent. Maria started crying. Elena stood up from the table, backing away like she was about to run again. And Jake sat there for a long moment, then slowly stood up and walked to the gun safe he kept in the office. He pulled out his rifle, checked it, and set it by the front door. Then he came back to the table and said, "Okay, here's what's going to happen. FBI's going to find this guy, but until they do, we're on lockdown. Nobody leaves the ranch alone. We're armed at all times. And if Victor or anyone else comes anywhere near my family, I won't hesitate." That night, none of us slept much. Jake and I took turns on watch, even though rationally we knew the guy probably wasn't coming, that he'd be smart enough to run far away. But rationality doesn't mean much when you're scared. Around 3 in the morning, the motion sensors Jake had installed around the property went off. Jake grabbed his rifle, told me to stay with Elena and Maria in the safe room he'd built in the basement, and went to check it out. I sat there with the 2 women, listening to them pray in Romanian, holding a pistol I barely knew how to use, and praying myself. 20 minutes later, Jake came back down. His face was unreadable. "We got a problem," he said. "Y'all need to see this." We followed him upstairs and out the front door. There, tied to the porch railing, was a man. Not Victor. Someone else. Younger, maybe mid-20s, beaten to hell and barely conscious. There was a note pinned to his jacket. "This boy was sent to watch your house. I found him first. Victor made a mistake coming after you. He won't make another. Consider this a gift. V." We called the FBI immediately, and they came out with local cops. The guy tied to the porch was named Connor, a low-level criminal Victor had hired to surveil the ranch. But here's where it gets insane. The V on the note wasn't Victor. It was Vasile, Elena's uncle, a man she'd thought was dead. Turns out Vasile had been looking for Elena since she'd disappeared from Dallas, but not to hurt her. He'd been trying to save her. He was former Romanian military, had connections in some dark places, and when he'd finally tracked her to Amarillo and learned about Victor, he'd decided to handle it himself. 2 days later, they found Victor's body in the desert outside El Paso, single gunshot to the head, execution style. Vasile was never found, never officially connected to it. The FBI told us off the record that we should probably just be grateful and not ask too many questions. So we didn't. And just like that, it really was over. The trafficking network was destroyed, the immediate threat was eliminated, and we could finally breathe. Jake and Elena decided to have a real wedding in March, a proper ceremony with family and friends. And it was beautiful. Elena wore the simple white dress that made her look like an angel, and Jake cried through the whole ceremony, just stood there and cried while promising to love her forever. I was the maid of honor, and Maria walked Elena down the aisle, and we celebrated on the ranch under string lights and Texas stars. It's been almost a year now since all of that went down, and life is good, really good. Elena's thriving. She's opening her own catering business with Maria, making the most incredible Moldovan food, and getting written up in local papers. Jake's happier than I've ever seen him, talking about kids and growing old, and all the things he never let himself dream about before. They turned the ranch into a kind of sanctuary, offering jobs and housing to other women escaping bad situations, working with nonprofits to make a real difference. But every December 15th, on the anniversary of that night at the train station, Jake and Elena drive into Dallas, go to the same diner where they had their first real conversation, and they order hot chocolate and chicken soup. They sit in the same booth and they remember how it all started. How one act of kindness, one decision to not walk past someone in need, changed everything. And me? I think about how close we came to losing it all. How those moments, those choices, they matter more than we realize in the moment. Jake could have walked past Elena that night. He could have convinced himself it wasn't his problem. He could have given up when things got dangerous. But he didn't. And because he didn't, because he chose to be brave and kind and stubborn and recklessly good, an entire family exists that wouldn't have otherwise. Lives were saved, love was found, and something broken became beautiful. That's the story of how my millionaire cowboy brother found a freezing maid at a train station and ended up finding himself in the process. Wild, right? Sometimes I still can't believe it all happened, but I got the scars, the memories, and the family dinners full of laughter and Romanian curse words to prove it did. And if there's any lesson in all this chaos, I think it's this. Don't walk past people in need. Don't ignore that voice in your gut telling you to help. Because you never know whose life you're meant to change or how they might end up changing yours right back. The world's a messed up place, but it's also full of these moments where everything can shift, where strangers become family, where the right choice at the right time can save lives. Jake made that choice on a freezing December night, and it cost him everything and gave him everything all at once. And yeah, I'm still mad he got married without me there the first time, but I got over it, mostly. I remind him about it every Christmas, though, just to keep him humble. That's what sisters are for, after all.